So let's talk about the Punk Rock MBA. Now, for those who aren't aware, the Punk Rock MBA is a hugely successful rock and metal content creator, mainly on YouTube, but also, of course, does all like social media, all that kind of stuff. He recently did an interview with Jesea Lee, I think it was. Forgive me if I've got that one wrong. But he recently did an interview where he said that he's done with YouTube. He's not into the music that he's been talking about. He's never been into the music, and he only did it for the money, and he's hit his financial goals, what they may be, and that's it. He's done with it now. So he says that he's burnt out with it. You know, he's burnt out with talking about it, and this raises the question about content creation in a rock and metal sphere. So at Prime Audio Radio, we play a whole bunch of new music, including bands that people may never have heard of, just to get some music out there. It's part of the reason for what we do. However, if you create content on that kind of thing online, where you are dependent upon views and engagement for making money to enable you to keep doing it, we know from trying it ourselves that people just, the engagement isn't there. The audience isn't there because everybody has a different idea of what they want from new music. So you could end up doing what the Punk Rock MBA did. And let's go through some of his last few months of video content. The Strange History of 3 Days Grace, The Rise and Fall of Sugar Ray, The Strange History of Goldfinger, How Muse Defied the Odds, Why Everyone Hated Pop Punk, sad but true, The Strange History of Motionless in White, The Problem with Metalcore, The Rise and Fall of Alien Ant Farm, The Unexpected Rise of Knocked Loose, Arf Arf, which personally that's one of my favourites. But if you see the pattern emerging here, in order to get views on videos that people will actually engage with, you've got to look to the past, to bands that have been, to bands that maybe even have had their day. In fact, Finn McKenty, the Punk Rock MBA, said, he doesn't want to make more videos about System of a Down. And you kind of take his point there. If you want to get views, look at this, The Strange History of Typo Negative, 402,000 views. That's great. That's the kind of numbers that a lot of content creators can only dream of. But he's doing that. And when he does the new stuff, Knocked Loose, The Unexpected Rise of Knocked Loose, that's only 140,000 views. Which, again, still a damn good number. But you look at the newer bands and they just don't get the engagement. And so I think Finn McKenty found himself in the situation where he burnt out. And he burnt out hard. And, having done that myself, I know the feeling. I burnt out 2 years ago, and I'm still not properly recovered from that. But it seems that, being a content creator in the style of Punk Rock MBA, a friend said it to me the best. He's not just burnt out, but he's gone full Homer Simpson. And he's burnt out, he's gone across that bridge and he's thrown the matches and Homer Simpson style burnt that bridge behind him.
That's for employing me for 8 years!
Because now, after doing that interview saying that he's never really been into the music, he was only doing it for the money, that's kind of him done in the rock and metal scene. It would take something remarkable to kind of come back from that kind of flipping the middle finger to the entire scene saying, I never liked this music anyway. I was only doing it for the money. I can't see any way back from that in our scene. Can you?
Well, he is the product. He is the product.
Yeah.
And that, and when you talk about why he burns out, if you become the product, the constant demands and the critique and that, so if you are the product. So I would imagine that the vast majority of people follow him because of him, not necessarily because he's talking about System of a Down. It's how he does it, and he is the magic sauce. Because there are a lot of people talking about System of a Down, a lot of people looking back on Iron Maiden, blah 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 blah. I get your point, though. Certainly, and we know this. We know this full full hand, whatever the word I'm looking for.
First hand.
But firsthand, we know this firsthand about how when we play new, and we're all about the new. It just doesn't engage. It doesn't, because it is so hit and miss. It is so hit and miss. What he's been doing, people are following him. And that's one thing you know about influencers. You follow influencers themselves. It's Punk Rock MBA is the name of the channel. It's not the history of old music. Punk Rock MBA. He is the product. That's the problem. And the problems that come with that. So if you are the product, then, come on, monkey dance.
And that is part of the problem as well. So in his interview with Jesea Lee, he says that he used to put more of his opinions and his humor into his videos. Like from 2018 when he started making them, he used to put a lot more of himself into his videos. But then he'd just make a joke about AN other band. He wasn't having a dig. It was just a cheap joke. And he said he got sick of being flamed in the comments. And you know what? Comments on internet videos, all this kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, in a lot of his videos, he does come across quite negative. But I understand why he did that. Rage clicks and rage bait. People will respond and engage more with videos online when they're angry and when they're pissed off about stuff. So he, as the creator of his channel, he kind of sets the tone by being quite neggy. But then you and I, Moose, know that we've tried to lead by example with Primordial. Trying to be positive, trying to be upbeat, trying to put good vibes out into the world. And we still, in the online sphere, end up with negativity coming back in us. They say what you put out into the world comes back to you. Often it comes back with a load of bad stuff with it as well. And
but that in itself is life. I mean, it really is, particularly when you're trying to please all. As opposed to picking a very specific. Let's go after that. So, what you've just talked about, the Punk Rock MBA, and how he sort of dialed back the sort of personality stuff and the personal opinions. We've done that. Primordial's done that 100%, and it has made the feedback sphere much less toxic. Yeah. Still has its moments. From when we started, it was tough. But man, it got reaction, did it not? And that was kind of the point, was it not? It
did, and that was kind of the point that Finn McKenty was going for as well. But then he kind of burnt out with it, and he burnt out with the music. And this is the issue, or one of the issues with creating content online. Like, speaking from personal experience, if I were making videos about looking at the Punk Rock MBA's history, 3 Days Grace, Sugar Ray, Goldfinger, Muse, I'd be bored just going over the same old stuff from bands that, much as I regret to admit it, are now 20, 30 years old. It'd be boring. Whereas if I got to make content, which I could easily do, and talk about the likes of Bloodywood, talk about the likes of Bill Murray, the band, not the actor. Well, that'd work too. The likes of, let's see, what have I put on our playlist recently? The likes of Silly Goose, Ladrones, some bands who are kind of small, who are up and coming. I'd love to do that, help shout about these bands. But because these aren't names that many people know, nobody would engage with that content. And it wouldn't go anywhere. I could put together the greatest YouTube video saying, 5 bands that you need to listen to right now. And talk about, Bloodywood, talk about Ladrones, Mexican Latino new metal, which is fabulous. Silly Goose, who are not Mexican, but still very new metal. Very cool. I could talk about all these bands and it would get 200 views, which is worthy to do, but
doesn't make you money. It doesn't make you money.
Your ROI on that is going to be nothing.
Exactly. And so just as these bands on their level, if you're talking about them, and let's think, okay, how many tickets do they sell? How many people do they play to? So there will be a mathematical equation going, okay, well then you'll get this number of views because that's the interest in them right now. But if you tap into something like Iron Maiden, now there's an easy one to go at because Iron Maiden has 35 years, however long it's been, 40 years of history and success and so much to go at. So, put that into your search, and it's like, oh yes, something about Maiden, derp, 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 And so it's simple mathematics, and we shouldn't be surprised that a band that is struggling to shift 50 tickets doesn't get much of a reaction because they're struggling to sell 50 tickets. So, but every band presumably has been at that point. Every band. So, you're going to, and only a tiny percentage make it through to go to that next level, like a minuscule percentage. So, just by definition, if you're going to cover them all, only a tiny percentage of something that you did 6 years ago will make it through and still resonate today. So that is the mathematical fact. So regardless of your opinion, and I was listening to you talking about, if I was talking about Muse and all these, I'd be bored. Well, show me a journalist, show me a presenter, show me a broadcaster or a content creator who only does what interests them. I'd love that. Bizarrely, I look at there's a fella that creates content for Newcastle United that I kind of watch, but I have kind of fallen out, and I don't watch it anymore because it in itself becomes boring because there's only so much you can talk about Newcastle. Seriously, and so okay, what can I do now? The history of the entertainment or whatever it is, and it's just like now I'm struggling for ideas because creating this content every single day, you got to have a real talent for it. You are the product.
Yeah.
So you have to be the person and the engaging bit. So just as you have on the radio station, you play a band that you're not fond of. I do it all the time. I'm not a big fan of Iron Maiden, but I completely understand their importance. I know why they're there, and I recognize it and I accept it, and they deserve it 100%. Just look at the numbers. I mean, it's just a numbers game. It's just a numbers game, and if you can be engaging, and you can, and you look at I don't know if I would necessarily want to go into this, but you look at tapping into very specific psychological motivations and impulses and things like that. You look at the channels that do really well. They're excellent at doing that. They're excellent at, just touching that nerve, touching that emotion. Now, whether that's rage or hope or despair or whatever it is, they're very good at that. Or inspiration, like really good. And so there is a talent, and they're speaking to you, that one person.
Yeah.
Even though and even they say, hey guys, and okay, but they're still talking to you because you're watching it on your own. They are the product. So I can understand how he burnt out. And if it was that he just got the money and run, well then, how is that different from anybody else?
Yeah.
How is that different from anybody else? I don't think it is.
As much as it pains me, to see something like this happen to my beloved rock and metal scene, I kind of respect him for it.
Yeah.
He's made a lot of great content. He's garnered a lot of views. He's entertained a lot of people for a long time. And now he's just decided he's had enough of it. I mean, yeah, it's fairly disrespectful to the music itself and to other people in the scene, but I kind of respect him for going out on his own terms and just going, nah.
Why is it disrespectful? It says, I don't really like it. That's me. I just don't like this. So I'm not a big fan of this. So, okay.
It implies that he's been having people on, that he's been disingenuous this entire time, which for people who've really engaged with his content, that leaves a bit of a nasty taste in the mouth.
I wonder if you looked at it critically, maybe he was actually saying, when you're saying he's quite neggy, maybe he was actually expressing a displeasure at what it was. And I'm not a big fan of this because I'm so negative. You'd think he'd be effusive and incredibly optimistic and positive if he was loving every minute. Well, clearly he was not. Yeah. Clearly. In his tone, in his words, and in his mannerisms. So that should have been obvious to anybody. But you engage with him because, it's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. And, you can point your finger at him. We've had the same conversations within Primordial on a tiny little scale. Not on a tiny little scale, on the same scale. Honestly, what we have put ourselves through from our own choice, nobody has forced us to do anything. And this is like Punk Rock MBA as well. Nobody forced him to do this. He did it. He chose to do it. He created his own universe. And now, I want to move away. I want to move away from this universe. I want to go to a different one. And maybe he doesn't hate it so much. Maybe he's just tired. Maybe, oh man, do we have to talk about this again? Really?
I think that seems to be his approach to it. Like, he's just tired of talking about System of a Down and Linkin Park. And the main comparison that I feel like I can draw there, Moose, when you and I worked at Rock Radio in Manchester, And thing is, when you work in radio, most radio stations have a very limited playlist because you want to play the hits, you want to play them often so that people keep listening. Because your average listening session on radio is probably only about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Play the hits, play them often. That's the thinking behind the vast majority of radio. And so we did that at rock radio. And we'd hear Hotel California every other day. We'd hear The Boys Are Back in Town every other day. And these are absolute classics that, we ostensibly love. But we grew to hate them. Which then tying it back to the Punk Rock MBA. Yes. He's done a similar thing in the YouTube world. He has played the hits and he's played them often. Talking about Parkway Drive, talk about Breaking Benjamin, Static X, Bloodhound Gang, Sleep Token, Limp Bizkit, Sublime, Dead Kennedys, Foo Fighters, System of a Down, Tom DeLonge from Blink. He's effectively playing the hits and playing them often. And I'm sure he had a team around him to produce stuff, but as effectively a solo content creator, he's just burnt out with it. And, I send my sympathies to him because it is not a fun place to be when you're just dragging your ass through the whole thing. Especially as a solo content creator. Like he's, been sat there in his studio just going, I got to talk about Blink-182 again. That's where he's at with it. So I fully sympathize with him.
He gets no sympathy from me because he created it himself and nobody forced him to do it. So he's kept in that environment. I had much admiration for going, you know what? F you. I'm gone. I'm walking. Which is really punk rock. I go, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go make some cheese. That's what I'm going to do, or whatever. Whatever he does, is immaterial. It's the fact that he came out and said, I'm done. And he admits it as opposed to subjecting himself to a day after day after day after day. Maybe there's a lesson there. Maybe there's a lesson there for all of us.
So it could well be that his final act, his final flip of the finger as the YouTuber that we all know, the Punk Rock MBA, could well be the most punk rock thing he's ever done.
Primordial Radio.